The atmosphere outside the courthouse was electric. TV cameras were lined up all down the sidewalks, and reporters shouted out to anyone who would listen, all in an effort to try and catch a glimpse of the man who had virtually become a household name, Kody Brown, the husband of the famous Sister Wives family. For years, audiences around the world had come to know Kody as the calm, collected, and oh-so-perfect husband. However, today, all that was about to come crumbling down. As soon as the doors to the courthouse swung open, there was an air of something monumental about to occur. Guards led Kody through the sea of cameras, representing every reporter there, and every click of every camera seemed to highlight his every step. While he was coming in with the confidence he usually exuded, there was just enough pause in his step that suggested he somehow knew the tempest he was about to walk into. All eyes in the room followed his entrance, with some filled with compassion, others with doubt, and the rest with the simple desire to experience the kind of drama that had been hinted at for months. The courtroom was completely full to capacity. Even those who wanted to watch wanted a seat, while others were leaning on the walls and door frames, straining their necks to be a part of the historic occasion that was about to unfold. The public gallery was a mix of fanatic supporters, interested onlookers, journalists, and legal enthusiasts who were all drawn to the drama that was about to unfold. There was an atmosphere of excitement, a hum of conversations, yet an undertone of tension that hung in the air like a storm cloud that was ready to burst. At the center of it all was Kody's sixth wife, who had lived in the background of cameras, media, and a family that had been carefully documented on television. She was dressed in simple yet elegant fashion, exuding serenity and strength. Unlike everyone else in her environment, who was anxious about what was happening, she had poise. Her eyes had a hardness in them, revealing that she was ready for what was about to happen, no matter what it might take. She walked through the media with her head held high, her silence saying much more than anything else could. Court personnel quieted everyone with a reminder of decorum, and the whispers lapsed into silence. Judge Knight entered with her gavel held high, and the room settled into deference. It wasn't just another trial. It was something that would shatter how the Browns would be perceived by the general public for years to come. They had gotten a glimpse behind the curtain of reality TV, where only what they wanted to reveal of themselves could be seen. Happy family mealtimes, vacations, and happy relationships among the wives. They just hadn't filmed what was hidden beneath the surface when the cameras stopped rolling. Kody sat down at the defense table, surrounded by his lawyers. He adjusted his tie, squared his shoulders, and tried to produce a confident smile, but it fell short of reaching his eyes. There was a subtle change in his expression, a flicker of uncertainty that had not been present in his carefully constructed public facade. Across the room, the sixth wife took her place, serene, unyielding, commanding the space around her, simply by standing there, saying nothing. There was an electric charge running between them, a tacit recognition that this showdown would never be the same. The air was charged, the press was aware, the audience was aware, and even the court staff felt it. Every single camera present in the courtroom focused on these two important personalities, prepared to record each word, each look, and each fleeting reaction. Everyone present had a collective understanding of what was about to be witnessed in this very same room. Something extraordinary was about to happen, as years of personal struggles, hidden away, would be exposed before this very world. As the trial began, the intensity was almost palpable. The sound of the gavel coming down indicated the beginning of what would become one of the most publicized court trials of reality television lore. Kody's sixth wife adjusted her stack of papers, took a deep breath, and got set to speak. The whole courtroom appeared to be swallowing a collective breath, awaiting the initial statements that would rip through the veneer of the Brown family. Even before she spoke, there was a sense of drama in the courtroom. Journalists were whispering to each other, guessing what secrets were about to be uncovered. In the courtroom gallery, fans were leaning forward, some with a sense of skepticism, others with eagerness. Meanwhile, on social media outside, there was a torrent of rumors, live tweets, and videos of her arrival at the courtroom, as if a movie was playing out, and this was real life. Kody was caught somewhere between the confident and composed individual that the audience had come to recognize on television, and the slight uncertainty that clouded him momentarily. He leaned uncomfortably in his seat and caught the eye of the sixth wife. For the first time in what had been documented as the harmonious and united family on television that Kody had appeared to be the head of, Kody was about to have his notion thwarted. On the other side of the door, the world was waiting. Live coverage was provided by news organizations, and the anticipation was wondered at on social media pages. Media headlines were already beginning to emerge. Kody Brown faces sixth wife in court showdown. Secrets of sister wives' family about to be exposed. Courtroom drama shocks fans. It was an electric environment, and the buzz was palpable. Onlookers were not watching a courtroom. They were watching the disintegration of a very well-guarded public facade. And then, a moment is created that will lay the groundwork for all that will follow. As the judge calls the courtroom to order and asks the sixth wife to speak, all eyes are on her, and a silence is created that contains an almost palpable tension. The walls of the courtroom appear to press in closer, as if to hear the truth that this woman is now about to share, and a calmness about her seems to hide a significance that will not be left unspoken. This was just the startling courtroom entrance that would mark the start of a historic showdown. The calm before the storm was over, and the suspense in the air was enough to indicate that the world was in for a treat that would introduce a reality TV family in a whole new way. Kody Brown, who had been acclaimed or condemned by millions, was soon to encounter truths he could not deny anymore. Not to forget his sixth wife, who was more than ready to spill them all out, one at a time. The setting had been established. The world was watching, and the uchast that was about to go down in court would go on to make news among some of the most talked-about episodes in reality TV history. A sudden quiet fell across the courtroom as the judge nodded towards Kody Brown's sixth wife. All eyes, all cameras, were upon her, waiting to record the instant the truth would finally be told. She smoothed a fold from her papers, straightened her shoulders, took a deep breath. There was no hesitancy, no fear within the depths of her gaze. And then began the most startling testimony ever to be delivered within the world of reality TV, sending the Brown family reputation tumbling to its foundation. She started speaking softly, but every word was full of weight. All these years, I have been observing how a very carefully constructed picture of our family has been represented to the world. However, she continued, the truth is a very far cry from what is represented on television. The courtroom was aghast at this statement. It was not a practice or a TV show. It was emotional and very personal. It was emotional and very personal. She talked about the years of pain and stress, sleepless nights and anxious days because of Kody's manipulative ways, a report said. While audiences knew there were episodes of laughter and family outings, there were also years of tension, fear, and thinking that she was walking on eggshells at home because of Kody's actions. And these actions were now taking center stage. Again, every word prompted murmurs from the audience, and some discomfort from even Kody's attorneys, as he sat, listening to his ex-wife. Then came the revelations that completely shocked the audience. Financial matters gave us little leeway as far as independence was concerned, she began. We could have some independence, but little independence. But I realized that our lives were not our own. Our money, decisions, even our choices in life could be determined by him. And the world did not see any of this. The crowd hung silently on her every word. This is what they could not show in reality TV. Her revelations did not end there. She spoke of emotional abuse, favoritism, which had disrupted the whole family setup. Though Kody Brown's image in the media was that of fairness, of love for all his wives, this was not exactly the case, she said. There were times when promises had been broken, emotions disregarded, and some members of his family put above others. Each of these revelations portrayed a man who had managed his private life behind his very public face. The most astounding part of the testimony was when she started revealing private text messages, emails, and video recordings that disputed what Kody had been saying publicly. The courtroom was in shock as she showed evidence of misconduct that many had merely speculated about but never been able to prove. There was no doubt about what was being presented in court, and Kody fidgeted with his tie as a manifestation of unease, as his cool facade started to crumble with the specifics of the allegations against him. Throughout her statement, the sixth wife was very calm and steadfast, but the underlying emotion was very apparent. It was the pain and the need to finally tell the truth. I want to state that I am not here to destroy him out of malice, she was careful to say. However, I am here because the truth must be told. Behind the cameras, our lives, our struggles, and the truth deserve to be acknowledged. And the courtroom leaned in ever so slightly on every word. The media response was immediate. Flash photography was going on, catching every tear, every pause, every angry look between Kody and his wife. Note-taking was furious, as reporters wrote furiously into their notebooks. Social media outside the courthouse was going bananas with live reports. Video of the testimony was already trending on social media. This was the first glimpse the world had seen of this Brown family dynamics, and the viewing audience was enthralled. As a matter of fact, while giving her testimony, Kody was able to answer back through counsel, though each successive denial looked less credible than the previous one. The evidence given by sixth wife was very specific, very organized, and very personal. Indeed, one had the sense that she was not out there simply telling a story, a personal testimony, so that her truth would not be readily ignored or discarded, including the judge, who was listening intently as if on tenterhooks for a deeper understanding of what was at stake. However, matters in the courtroom took an interesting turn when she was able to open up about how their children have been affected by Kody's actions. Our children deserved honesty, stability, and love. Instead, They often experienced confusion, divided loyalties, and the burden of hidden truths, she said, her voice wavering ever so slightly. This caused painful moments in the courtroom, with viewers having known the Browns from the reality TV series to be this kind of happy, normal family, of having all this love within their family. Seeing each piece of testimony play out on television caused shockwaves throughout social media sites and online communities. Social media sites exploded with reaction, from disbelief to outright anger over what was transpiring regarding Kody and the image of the Brown family picture being questioned of what was real television and what was real reality. Social media sites and television pundits sorted out every detail of what was being said, analyzing what could possibly happen to Kody and the reputation of Sister Wives television series. What was most influential about this testimony is not only the revelation of the secrets, but also the courage with which it was delivered. To speak out against a family member as famous as Kody Brown in a public forum with a video camera crew, a judge, and a worldwide audience takes a tremendous amount of courage. Yet she was very aware of the dangers, the public outcry, the media, and the personal attacks. Yet she was unshakable in her resolve, and this has endeared her to a public who has a deep and abiding interest in what goes on behind the scenes of reality television families. Towards the end of giving her testimony, she talked about hope and empowerment, as she insisted that she did not take the stand as an act of revenge, but as an act that sought the truth. We deserve to live genuinely, without fear and without being manipulated, she said, as she delivered the statement that touched the courtroom as everyone showed respect, and even Kody's fans looked touched by the honesty and courage that had been shown. By the time she finished speaking, the effect of her words was hard to deny. Kody Brown's carefully polished image, honed through years of reality TV exposure, had been faced with hard evidence and true life experience that simply could not be ignored. For viewers, this was more than simply a reality TV show. This was an up-close and candid examination into the complexities and emotions that existed beneath the facade of one of the world's best-known families on television. As she stepped down from the witness stand, the cameras snapped away, and the journalists whispered among each other about what it all meant. Kody sat there in stunned silence, the man who always exuded such confidence and poise, now a portrait of frustration, of vulnerability, and of pure shock. The courtroom, once full of tension, was now crackling with the weight of the drama that had just unfolded. And every single person in the courtroom, and every single person back home watching the proceedings, knew that they were bearing witness to something historic. They knew that they had been given a glimpse into a world that had been hidden behind the glitz and the reality television fame. Her shocking testimony paved the way for the rest of the trial. There had been questions about how Kody would react, what would happen within the family dynamic, and what this means for the future of the Sister Wives series. One thing was clear, however. This sixth wife had not only revealed Kody Brown's deepest, darkest secrets, but had also shifted the perspective on one of the most popular polygamist families in television history. With the explosive testimony of wife number 6 complete, a heavy silence fell in the courtroom. It was the kind that feels charged, almost tangible, as if the air itself were holding its breath. The fans had known Kody Brown as confident and composed, the so-called patriarch of a harmonious family. But in that instant, pieces of his intricately crafted persona began to chip away, showing him to be suddenly vulnerable, uncertain, and shaken to his core. Kody sat at the defense table, his fingers drumming nervously on the polished surface. His normally confident posture had surrendered to a slight slouch, where he leaned his head low, as if deep in thought, or maybe concern. The cameras in the courtroom followed each little action, each micro-expression that gave his state away. The audiences, here in the courtroom and around the world, could feel it emanating from him. This was not the controlled, charming figure that reality TV audiences had come to know. It was a man confronting the real consequences of his private actions being exposed on a global stage. Immediately, his lawyers rose to answer the claims and lessen the impact of the statements by the sixth wife. They brought in arguments, referenced past interviews, and tried to present the testimony as exaggerated. But the effect was already taking hold of what had been presented: private messages, recordings, and explicit accounts. Each rebuttal sounded weaker than the one before, and by the energy in the room, it was crystal clear that the court, media, and public were moving toward this surreal truth that she laid out. The courtroom itself was turning into a drama that could compete with any scripted series shown on TV. Every uttered word, every exchange of a glance, and every movement or reaction from the participants weighed a lot. The sixth wife was calm and composed, sitting with folded hands, oozing confidence in the truth of her words. Her presence was commanding, and it became evident that the tide in the courtroom had changed and drifted toward her side. Contrarily, Kody seemed to become more tense, with his eyes darting to his attorney to reassure him, his jaw clenched as the moment's seriousness sank in. Perhaps the most dramatic moment came when the sixth wife took the hot seat, fielding questions from the opposing counsel. Each one seemed calculated to undermine her credibility, to nip holes in her story. But with precision and clarity, she replied to each, solidifying her assertions and offering new context that showed partiality in Kody's earlier statements to the media. As the room huddled in closer, she then delivered incidents of manipulation, playing favorites with wives, and the emotional strains from living at Kody's control. Her voice, though soft, spoke volumes with sincerity, her words impossible to turn a deaf ear to. Kody tried at various times to answer, his tone defensive and frustrated. But each thing he said seemed to conflict with bits of evidence that had already surfaced. Those private texts, recorded videos, and documented interactions concretely served as a counter-narrative to his public persona. For the first time in years, the audience was able to see a reality where Kody Brown's carefully maintained image of authority, charm, and being even-handed was being challenged, and in ways that visibly unsettled him. The theater in the courtroom just reached its pinnacle when the sixth wife introduced further evidence, illustrating what the children were facing due to Kody's actions. She described moments of confusion, emotional stress, and divided loyalties that had arisen due to favoritism and secrecy. This wasn't some family squabble. This was about the environment to which the children had been exposed. Those in the courtroom who were observing gasped audibly and whispered in shock at the implication. His darkening expression told it all as Kody realized the full weight of her testimony. The judge, taking careful notes, seemed increasingly attentive to the implications. As soon as she had finished testifying, social media went into meltdown outside the courtroom. Within minutes, Clips of her testimony had gone viral, amassing millions of views and fueling heated debate. Viewers picked apart each and every moment, line of evidence, and facial expression. Hashtags started trending, Kody exposed, hashtag sister wives drama, and hashtag courtroom revelations. Analysts speculated on the future of the Brown family and what this would mean for the Sister Wives franchise. The courtroom drama had become a truly global event. It had taken over the airwaves, captivating the fans as much as the critics. Inside, the tension was palpable. Every gesture and glance that passed between Kody and his sixth wife spoke volumes. Much anger, disappointment, frustration, and even regret. She had not only called out his actions, but questioned the very foundation that this family had presented to the world. The weight of accountability weighed heavy, and was a complete opposite from the free-spirited, glittery lifestyle witnessed on the reality TV show. The more Kody tried to take back control of the narrative, the more powerful the statements of the sixth wife seemed. Clear and articulate, she spoke about the struggles that had gone unseen, the emotional bearing of hardships, and what it had truly meant to live in a polygamous home at the direction of Kody. Her testimony proved that their life as a family had been much more convoluted, emotionally draining, and private than anyone had ever thought. As the hours ticked by, it became obvious that Kody Brown's courtroom strategy was beginning to decimate. His legal team wasn't able to counteract the evidence in detail or the credibility of the testimony provided by the sixth wife. Every attempt at a defense sounded reactive rather than proactive, a stark contrast to her calculated and deliberate revelations. It was apparent that she had prepared studiously, understanding not only the legal implications, but also the public scrutiny that would follow. The emotional burden was piling on Kody, who shifted uncomfortably in his seat, at times avoiding eye contact and displaying the tension that contrasted strongly with his cool, collected public demeanor in earlier years. This was theater of truth. The audience, both in the courtroom and online, could see what years of secret manipulation had brought about. It was drama not staged by a script, but raw, real, deep within the gut. At one moment, the sixth wife paused and looked directly at Kody, her eyes steady, unwavering, and filled with quiet strength. "This is not about revenge," she said softly but firmly. "It is about truth, transparency, and accountability. Our lives, our family, and our experiences deserve to be acknowledged and not hidden behind a facade." The weight of that sentence hung in the air as it went through the courtroom, silencing even the murmuring spectators. It was a moment of clarity, a reminder that this wasn't some reality TV show. It was real life, with consequences. As the day came to a close, some serious momentum had been built up inside the courtroom, the likes of which it had never seen. Kody Brown was no longer the unshakable, confident patriarch, but instead found himself in a situation where both his personal and public life were in jeopardy. His sixth wife proved to be a valid, gutsy, articulate voice that spoke volumes, revealing secrets and remolding the Brown family history. With this session, the courtroom drama was far from over, but it had set the stage for a historic confrontation. The evidence, the testimony, and the emotional intensity had left an indelible mark on everyone present. For the audience at home, it was a revelation that reality TV often hides more than it shows, and that behind each polished image, hidden struggles, secrets, and pain can be concealed. Cameras captured Kody leaving the courtroom, displaying frustration, contemplation, and finally, vulnerability as the session drew to a close. His sixth wife followed with a composed expression, one where resolve seemed to paint a silent statement of strength and integrity. As they emerged outside, media outlets started their live coverages. Social media was abuzz with analyses, and the story started to trend worldwide. One thing was certain: Kody Brown's carefully maintained image had been publicly challenged, and the implications would ripple far beyond the courthouse walls. It would be remembered as a watershed moment in reality television history, a place where the gap between the public image and the private reality was ripped wide open for an adoring public to bear witness to. Kody Brown's reaction, the tension in that courtroom, and the sixth wife's courage all combined to create the alchemy of a tale that would be dissected, debated, and remembered for years to come. The courtroom doors swung shut on Kody Brown and his sixth wife, leaving only a charged room in their wake. This energy that had been simmering inside the courtroom for hours was now beginning to surface in small but potent ways. Faces that had been calm during the testimony were now etched, not just with shock, but strain, as the very room was filled, not just with the proceedings, but a seismic change in the story of one of the most popular families on reality TV. The sixth wife walked out into the courtroom with a calm but determined look, her shoulders back, her head held high. Yet beneath this calm facade, she carried the intensity of emotions that had been building in her accumulating years of unspoken conflicts. There was much more at play as she entered this courtroom, taking her much-prepared case against this family structure, where her own voice had sometimes been drowned out by the voices of others. For her, this court appearance was definitely not about seeking vengeance, but about seeking closure. In the courtroom, Kody remained mute and looked tortured by the effects of the statements that kept being echoed. He looked anything but confident and charming. It was more the result of frustration and shock. He had always been the master of the family story and the portrayal of it in front of the cameras. But it appeared that all of it was slowly crumbling away under the effect of the statements of his sixth wife, while the entire world watched. But the emotional ripple effects of this drama reached far beyond the trial itself and into the audience of devoted fans who watched sister wives on television and wondered whether the Brown family was a genuine representation of a happy polygamous arrangement, or whether it was a carefully constructed facade designed to pass on a perception of normalcy while obscuring a very different reality. Videos of the trial became instantaneous virals, with millions of people around the world reacting in a very short amount of time to the scenes of the trial itself, particularly the rapid-fire succession of testimonials given by Kody Brown and those who followed him, including the sixth wife, who was praised by some simply for telling the truth, a truth that was very much more complicated and complex than what was ever shown on television. Some people hoped Kody Brown was a complex and multidimensional human who, aside from the problem of Brown's wives, was a good man who simply was not very good at raising children. As far as the family is concerned, the repercussions were very personal. Kody's other wives are said to have had feelings ranging from shock and hurt to worries about the future for their family. Issues that had long been suppressed behind closed cameras are now out in the open and could never go back. Discussion that had been very personal before had now become the subject of press speculation, and even the emotional toll that the family members took had been evident. While the children, being to some extent protected from the proceedings in the courtroom, were not completely spared from the emotional after-effects, the sixth wife made it clear that the influence of favoritism, concealment, and conflict in their upbringing was such that it was certainly more complicated than what was presented on their reality TV show. While experts observed the trial, they pointed out the psychological aftereffects of such an ambience on children. This was more sobering than emotional to many onlookers, as the sequence of events in the courtroom made the aftereffects of reality TV eminently emotional. The impact of the revelations for Kody, however, was more than what the public might think of him. It was personal as well. He had been working to create a story where he was a loving, charismatic, and fair patriarch. The truth of the sixth wife's statements discredited that story, with inconsistencies and behaviors that had been occurring, which the public had not been privy to. Each one of these revelations had an impact, not only in a legal capacity, but in an emotional one as well, and had to be dealt with by Kody. This courtroom drama also raised questions about the reality television genre that had become so popular. Viewers are left wondering if the Sister Wives show is what it seems, or if it is simply another construction of television. With the television series and the courtroom drama, the ethics of the production of television are brought into question. It is the cost of television that the audience is now seeing, the cost that is paid in the lives of the participants. In this backdrop of emotions, the sixth wife was yet again revealed as a woman of strength. Her ability to address these issues in an open, honest manner drew admiration from all quarters. She had turned her suffering into strength, taking charge of her story in an environment where she was always muffled. Her struggle was something that many of her spectators could relate to in their own lives, bringing about a feeling of collective understanding in them. #bravery was trending on all social media platforms. Even his fans couldn't deny the emotional import of the testimony presented. One observer commented, "The specific testimony that has been presented, combined with the evidence that has been put forth, has really made it very hard to brush off these allegations." In this way, a theater of justice had become a venue not merely for a drama of rights and injustices, but for a revelation of human emotions and the ramifications of long-hidden truths. The emotional aftermath also raised questions about reconciliation, accountability, and change. While some guessed that the Brown family might be able to repair relationships and rebuild trust, others never believed that the wounds could ever be tended. The fact was that the courtroom experience had highlighted the gritty reality of life in a polygamous family, heavy with complicated relationships, emotional turmoil, and old wounds. For the sixth wife, telling her story was the beginning of healing for herself as well as her family. Legal scholars have asserted the importance of the testimonials within the determination of possible rulings within the trial. Her testimony, which included physical evidence to support it, helped to make her a key participant within the trial. On the other hand, the defense of Kody Brown was put into the utmost scrutiny. This was because the psychological weight of the testimonials within the trial defied legal might. In fact, the courtroom had become a reflection of society, which often seeks to make its citizens accountable. As the end of the day came, the courtroom was emptied, but the emotional resonance was left behind. For Kody Brown, it was a day of introspection, of vulnerability, and of facing truths long buried deep down. For the sixth wife, it was a beginning of liberation, a beginning of empowerment, and a beginning of listening to her voice. For spectators, it was a peep into a world of complexities, a world of struggles, and a world where reality television stardom comes at a certain cost. The effects were not just limited to individuals, but trickled down to the wider discourse that was happening in regards to reality shows, family, and reality itself, and how people are affected by being in front of reality through these shows. The drama that was happening in courts was magnified in news channels, to which people tuned in, highlighting their concern for those affected by these courtroom dramas. Ultimately, what transpired emotionally from the courtroom proceedings was not just about drama or spectacle. It was about vulnerability, accountability, and speaking truth to power. It highlighted what happens when there is a gap between what is perceived publicly and what is really taking place behind closed doors and out of view of television cameras and audiences. Indeed, the courtroom testimony of the sixth wife had created a lasting impression, changing the dynamic of discussions regarding the Brown family, reality television, and, of course, what takes place behind the cameras when the cameras are turned off and out of view from prying eyes. The courtroom had now emptied out, but the repercussions of what had happened in court earlier in the day had gone beyond the courtroom. What had happened in court was no longer a courtroom drama. It had turned out to be something that had become a reality TV spectacular for the entire world. Kody Brown, patriarch of the popular reality TV reality show Sister Wives, had had his sixth wife in front of him in what would turn out to be one of reality TV's most spectacular moments. As the cameras tracked the individuals leaving the courthouse, it was as if the world paused to watch. In this way, the sixth wife led the charge, standing tall, head held high, yet clearly determined. In this way, she had already asserted control of her story, the challenges she had been living with all these years, the struggles she had been trying to keep at bay. By standing up for the world to see, she became the antidote to potential hurt she might receive, because she became an unimpeachable source within the Brown saga. Kody Brown followed, his expressions a mixture of frustration, contemplation, and yes, vulnerability. Kody had spent years projecting a confident, controlled image, in his personal life as well as on his reality show. But now that image had been challenged. The difference between his public face and his family's secret truths explained in court was clear, and this was a point of demarcation for viewers, a point at which they could finally see them and themselves differently. The days that followed would prove to be very trying, not only on the family, but also on their fans, who had previously admired their neat public veneer. The social media platforms went viral as soon as this happened. Videos of the trial evidence went viral, and everyone weighed in on the specifics of the new information. Fans of the sixth wife were praising her honesty and integrity, saying she was the voice of truth in a family that had been full of secrets all these years. Other users felt sorry for wondering why this information had come out like this. However, the controversy spilled over from the online platform. This is because the news about the confrontation between the Brown family and Troy Williams spread quickly through television channels. In fact, the news was presented as one of the most sensational courtroom confrontations of the year. Experts were left pondering the effects the revelations would have on the Brown family. This is with regard to the Sister Wives series that the family starred in. Indeed, the story that once portrayed the Brown family as the well-adjusted polygamous family had been completely turned around. Within the family, too, the emotional impact was even more acute. Kody's other wives are said to have exhibited divergent emotions, shock and denial on the one hand, and concern and wrath on the other. A Courtroom Revelations had removed the veil of secrecy that had covered internal dynamics that were hitherto unknown even to outsiders. Relationships that were seemingly strong were strained as each member of the family came to terms with the revelations that had spilled into the open. Matters that had been between them and the world were suddenly up for public viewing. Though spared from certain details, the children were not insulated from the ripple effects either. The trial had brought attention to the emotional struggles they had lived through, raised in a home where secrecy, favorites, and complexities reigned. Professionals in child psychology and dynamics commented on what might be expected long-term for children exposed to such an environment. And it brought up a multitude of questions on parental duties, not merely within institutions, but also at home. It was a humbling experience meant for the audience, a reminder of how a particular show might hide a reality beyond what was portrayed. For Kody, this court trial was a moment of reckoning. All the private deeds, the true facts behind closed doors, and the battles waged behind closed curtains must now be revealed. Kody was not only facing a trial by law, but was also dealing with a personal reputation that needed mending. Being the composed and collected face that the TV audience saw on shows was ironic. However, the need to be accountable, to face the imperfections that Kody could not control, and to shed the truth that had been veiled on the reality shows that Kody was a part of, was a moment of truth that defined many. The sixth wife, on the other hand, had been a symbol of empowerment and courage. Her willingness to share her experience received resonance from the audience because it was a fact that the audience had lived through difficult situations and complex family associations, or are perhaps trapped in a relationship. Her ability to give meaning to the experience she had gone through by constructing a compelling story portrayed the fact that truth can indeed defeat public criticism. The audience appreciated her expression and her ability to handle the courtroom testimony by recognizing the fact that she was a character both in the show and a catalyst for change. A reaction from the public wasn't long in coming. Viewers questioned whether the TV image of the Brown family had ever accurately reflected reality, wondering if the seemingly quaint, warm, and harmonious depiction of them was ever really representative of these qualities. The conversation moved from questioning and criticizing members of the Brown family to embracing a set of questions about reality TV and its ethics. How, through cameras and editing, struggles can be obscured and perceptions distorted. Members of the Brown family were representation of polygamous wholesomeness to reality TV fans were at the center of a cultural debate. The legal undertones were also extremely significant in the case. The sixth wife's testimony of truth, coupled with irrefutable evidence, had strengthened the wife's stance in the legal proceedings against the legal team of Kody. It was observed in the courtroom that the wife's credibility, together with irrefutable evidence of the truth behind the statements, had made the wife a force to be reckoned with in the courtroom, as well as in the public arena. Kody's fight would not be limited to a legal defense of his actions, which would be an uphill one, but would also involve the reinstatement of public opinion that had been affected adversely by the revelations in the case. As the dust began to settle in the wake of it all, it became apparent that the ripple effects of what happened in the courtroom would be felt for a long time to come. Family relationships would need to undergo some soul-searching and perhaps some reconciliation on the part of the Brown family members. Public opinion would continue to shape and change as people processed what was taking place and shared it on social media forums and watched developments unfold. Viewers of reality TV would see this story change from what was occurring on a television show to a human interest story with very significant implications. Actress Candy's reported activities as the sixth wife had started the proverbial tidal wave, and people began discussing more than just the Brown family dynamic. Issues regarding manipulation, finance, favoritism, and secrets in family dynamics had become part and parcel of the debates that occurred across all media platforms and even social platforms. Her bravery in standing up to authority had gone across the world and had encouraged many people to take a closer look at their lives. Yet, in the courtroom of public opinion, there was also a clear verdict. The sixth wife has changed the dialogue. The Brown family, once a source of inspiration to others through their harmonious relationship on television, was under examination and discussion at every turn. Yet in a confrontation that would haunt him for the remainder of his life, Kody Brown was not merely experiencing a personal problem, but a clash of history. In this case, a confrontation that would test his legacy or that of his brand, reality television itself, which stood to be reshaped by this unforgettable experience in his life, Judge Judy included. And when the session finally ended, the story had moved beyond the confines of the courtroom and had entered a different realm altogether. It was no longer a domestic saga, but a world phenomenon, a reminder of transparency, bravery, and what happens when the truth is hidden behind masked faces. Followers, critics, and observers alike were left to dwell on what it meant to live with fame, what it meant to bear responsibility as a celebrity, and what one voice could do to alter a saga long dictated by masterfully maintained illusions. Finally, this trial witnessed the turning point for the Brown family and reality TV viewers across the world. The secrets of Kody Brown were revealed. The sixth wife became the icon of strength and truth, and the world witnessed something unimaginable. Unveiling of a family that appeared to be flawless and in harmony, with their covers blown off on national TV. There was so much to learn from this experience, something no TV show could ever provide. And as the cameras went dark and the courtroom was evacuated, there was something that was absolutely clear. The tale of Kody Brown and his sixth wife was to be remembered for all eternity as one of the greatest in reality TV history. It was, after all, the tale of exposure, of accountability, of hard truths, of remembering that in every camera-line smile, there exists an exponentially more complicated reality. And of the power to change that reality with the voice of truth.